Well, hey, welcome to Leadership Development, the official first week of Leadership Development. Thanks for getting here on time. You guys have been doing a really good... I just want to stop and make a little plug. Congratulate, no, that's not the right word. Encourage you guys for really being on time to things. I feel like we haven't really had much of an issue so far on project. You guys have been arriving to things on time, and I think that's really great. That's a mark of a leader. So I'm going to give my hand up to you guys there. Well done. I want to encourage you to keep that pace the rest of the summer. All project functions, including dinners, that's part of the project, that we really want to continue to be on time to those. I recognize sometimes you're getting off work late. You can't help that. But yeah, keep going hard with that. You guys are doing a great job. So, tonight we are starting our leadership development with stewardship. We're going to be talking about stewardship tonight. But before we do, will you guys pray with me, please? Because we need it. I need it. Lord God, we need you. Lord, you know that I need you. I've felt it all day. I've felt it as I've been preparing for this. And Lord, just seeing my weakness. God, I pray that we all will feel and sense our neediness and our weakness, our neediness for you. During this time, God, I pray that you'll give us humble hearts as we approach this time, that we will be posturing ourselves as learners and posturing ourselves ready to learn from you and not from me. So God, I just ask that you'll give us your Spirit during this time to discern and to even apply things quickly to our lives and to grow in this area of understanding what it means to be stewards of our lives, the lives that you've graciously given us, Lord, the lives that are not our own. So God, we're thankful, and I pray all this in your Son's name. Amen. So, again, leadership development, our theme this summer is the leader awakened, right? So we've been talking about, last week in orientation, we talked about how what has happened for us is that if we really have come to know Jesus truly, and we've really been awakened to the glory of God, that all of a sudden changes everything. And not only does it change everything, but He's also called us something new. That God has put a new identity on us, and part of that identity is to be a leader. And so we want to be growing this summer in leadership development into the leader that God's called us to be kind of unleashing that untapped leader within us, that we want to grow into leaders that God's called us to be. And so one of those major areas of leadership really has to do with understanding stewardship. So stewardship is maybe a word that you've heard before, and if you're honest, you might be like, I don't know if I fully understand what it means. Maybe not. I probably would have been in that position if I was you a few years ago. But really, stewardship has to do with understanding that things are not your own, but yet they're somebody else's, and you are in charge of managing it and overseeing it. So the reason why this is such a big topic for us is that the reality is this, that our lives are not our own. Not only are they not our own because, first of all, that God created it. Go ahead and throw that verse up. Genesis 3:19, Colton. Yeah. By the sweat of your... So this is what God says. This is... we just read the story yesterday. And if you remember when Adam and Eve sinned, God starts with the serpent and pronounces his curse. Then he goes to Adam, then he goes to Eve. And this is what he says to Adam. He says, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. He's saying you're nothing but dust, and you're going to return to dust. If that doesn't put you in your place, I don't know what will. You're just a collection of dust. That's all we really are. God took dust, put it together, and breathed life into it, and that's where Adam is. And we're his sons and daughters. And so we are dust, and we will return to dust. And why that's so significant is that we don't own anything. I hope that's humbling, because it is to me, that we don't own anything. Everything we have, everything we are, is a gift from God. Now, you might think, but I've done this, I've earned this, I've done this. Just keep going back to the root of where everything began, and you'll quickly realize that you don't have anything. Even the greatest athletes, they work super, super hard. Michael Jordan, best basketball player ever to live. I don't care what people say about LeBron or Steph Curry. Still the best. But it wasn't because of him. It was because God kept his heart beating every workout. It was because God allowed his muscles to develop the way that they should. It allowed his brain to function the way it did. And he even gave him the desire to become a good basketball. All these things. That we are nothing without God. And so that's why we need to understand what it means to be stewards. And so here's the definition, dictionary.com, stewardship. Simply it says the position and duties of a steward, meaning a person who acts as a surrogate of another or others, especially by managing property, financial affairs, and estate, etc. So it's kind of a wordy definition. Basically, everything we've already been talking about, that it's someone or the act of controlling or managing and taking care of the things that have been entrusted to us. And so Jesus talks about this a lot in his teachings. He talks about this idea of being stewards of the things that God's given to us. But really, before we kind of get into that, there's going to be a song that I want us to play. But before I do, one verse that just really comes to my mind is Psalm 90:12. I don't think I have it in the PowerPoint. That's okay. But it says, So teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. So I bring up that verse because the primary, the first area of stewardship we want to talk about tonight, basically the format of tonight is going to be two mini talks. Hopefully it'll be mini. I'm going to take the short time as I can. First one's going to be learning about stewardship of time. And the other one's going to be learning about stewardship of money. So for us to understand how to value and manage and use our time well, we have to understand that it's short and that it's going to echo for an eternity. So Psalm 90:12 says, So teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. He's saying there, if we could understand the brevity of our life and that we don't know when it's going to end, we'll get a little hint of wisdom. That we'll begin to live wisely. Live like you're dying. How many songs have been written about that? Like, was it Tim McGraw sings that one? Live like you're dying. It's powerful, right? It's powerful for a reason, because if you knew you only had 30 days left to live, every day would be pretty darn precious. So that's what the Bible's talking about here. But I have a song. It's he's one of my favorite Christian rap artists. His name's Timothy Brindle, and we're just going to play the first verse of this song, and the song is called "The Preciousness of Time." So follow along with the lyrics. We got some lyrics here. Be gracious to Colton. I'm kind of just threw him under the bus here, but he's going to play this, and we'll just listen along to this first verse. Well done. Let's give it up, man. I'm just kidding. So yeah, he just explained everything I wanted to tell you about time in about 2 minutes, and he rhymed it. So hopefully that was helpful. Basically what he's getting at is that God's outside of time. He controls all time. He's the Lord over all time. But yet, we're not like that. We're not like God. We are within time. We're on borrowed time. And all the time we've got is all the time we've got. And one day all the time will stop. I love that chorus. It's always really catchy to me. But really what we want to get out of this is that if we view our time as something that we own, if we view our time as our own, then we will surely misuse it. If you view your time as it's your time and nobody else's, and you own it, then you're going to misuse it. Because you're going to use it for yourself instead of the God who owns it, who rightfully owns it. But if we view our time as borrowed, and in fact simply stewards of our time, then we'll handle it with care. Think about when you borrow somebody else's thing, how much more careful you are with it. Hopefully you're kind in borrowing other people's things. If you borrow somebody's car, how much more careful are you when you're driving it? Hopefully. If something happens wrong, you're going to be that much more freaked out about it than if it was your own car. Same thing is true with our time, that it's not ours. And how much more should we be humbled by the fact that it's not just somebody else's, but it's the God of the universe. It's His time. So, because of that, we need to understand how to really think through how we plan our time, how we use our time. And we really want to talk about what are our priorities. So as you think about priorities, the reality is this, is that we will always give time to the things that we love most. We're always going to give... you can go back, sorry. Don't put that up yet. I didn't tell you that. You'll always give time to the things that you love most, right? It's not hard to do the things that you love. You're naturally going to tend towards doing the things that you really like to do. If you... whatever. If you love to sleep and you love extra sleep, you're obviously going to go to sleep without even thinking about it. If you love basketball, you're going to go play basketball because that's what you love to do, and you're going to make time for it. Whatever you love, you're going to make time for it. In other words, we do what we love. But we also, what we love most is because we have given time to it. So what I mean by that is, there are some things that you just naturally kind of pick up and like, man, I love it. But the reality is that you do the things that you love because you've given so much time to it. Meaning you've sowed time to it, and therefore you've grown in your love for it. Same thing is true for me. Like, I loved basketball growing up, but I grew to love it more and more the more I got to play it. And so the more I sowed to it, the more I loved it. So, in other words, practice makes priority. That sounds kind of funny, but practice makes priority. So the more you sow to something, the more you're going to grow to love it. Generally, if it's something that you're wanting to grow to love. So the reason I kind of show those things is to kind of help us view how we want to prioritize our time. So, Colton, you go ahead and show it up there now. You guys have maybe seen this illustration before, but this is a great illustration of prioritizing things. So you've probably seen this before, but if you want to maximize the volume of that mason jar, you want to start with the big rocks first. So what happens if you don't start with the big rocks first? If you start with the smallest thing first, which is the sand, the smallest things, if you start with that first, and then you put the pebbles in, and then you put the stones in, or the rocks in, you're not going to be able to fit it all, right? It's obviously overflowing. You can't. It's exceeded the volume of that jar. But if you put the big things in first, and then the next biggest things, and the smallest things, then it can maximize the volume of that jar. So that might seem very basic, obvious, maybe geometry, that you want to maximize the volume of it. But this is important because this is not often how we often live. So the reality is that when we think about prioritizing our time, we want to put the big rocks in first. But what happens is if we're not intentional in scheduling and thinking about how we use our time, what happens is the little unimportant things get put in first. And then as a result, the bigger important things kind of become overly urgent because there's not enough room, and sometimes we screw up the urgent things, the most important things, and we miss the most important things. So the question I want you to begin thinking about now is, what are the rocks in your life? What are your priorities? What are the things that you need to do? What are the things that you have to have in your schedule? And this is a good heart test. Because like I said, what we love, we will make time for. So if you're honest with yourself, even just looking at your schedule, looking at your time, think about this last year of school. How did you spend, just take one day, an average day, how did you spend it? Did you spend it like the jar on the left, with the priorities overflowing and there's not enough room in the day? Or did you spend it like that on the right? If you're like me, you probably spent it more like the one on the left, if you're being honest. That a lot of times the big rocks found their way to maybe second or third tier of importance. The reality is we want to grow to be leaders who are prioritizing our time by making the rocks the first thing we put into our day. So, to get into this, we're going to do a little bit of a workshop. So we're going to have 2 mini talks and 2 workshops tonight. Okay. So before we get to that, I want to kind of do a little bit of a disclaimer or preface. This is that how many of you have taken the Myers-Briggs personality test? I know everybody pretty much. So you might know your letters of what you are. Maybe you're an introvert or you're a sensor. That's what I am, sensing instead of intuitive. But when it comes to your planning, or you're a judger or you're a perceiver, some of you are going to be more naturally inclined to want to plan and schedule things, right? Some of you, when you think about getting out your planner and writing down everything, you're like, please gag me. I don't want to ever do that. And that's okay. God has wired us differently. But I will say this. We all are all wired differently. But whether you're a planner or not, whether you want to take time to do that or not, we're all called to use our time wisely. Right? That we're all stewards. I think that's already been made clear, that we have a certain amount of time and we want to use it to the best of our abilities, to the best of what God's given us to do. So, I hope that kind of hopefully levels the playing field and helping us see that there is a value of doing this. You might not be somebody who's, for the rest of your life, scheduling out your week every week. Should you? Maybe. I don't know. That's maybe a topic for discussion. But should you be thinking about how you're spending your time? Absolutely. Because we want to spend our time intentionally and wisely. And we want to think through, okay, how are we going to prioritize our time? And so to help us think through that, I think I've got a list here, Colton. Here's the way you should think about it. So think about it like this. Number one is you always want to start with the things that you need to do. That's your rocks. Number two, you want to start filling out after that is the things that you should do. Those are the little pebbles. Thirdly, the things that you want to do. That's the sand. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So we're going to talk a little bit more about stewardship, but now stewardship of money. So if you're anything like me, when you think about this idea of stewarding money and budgeting, you might begin to feel a little bit of guilt or shame, or kind of don't want to talk about it, don't want anybody to know about how you use your finances. For me, my background, I grew up a family of 5. I have 4 older sisters. So I'm the youngest of 5. So yeah, I have 5 moms. 1 mom and then 4 sisters who act like moms all the time. If you're older sisters in the house, you probably know what I'm saying. You probably did it to your younger brothers. But both of my parents were school teachers for all of their career of work after they graduated high school or graduated college. And my dad was also a basketball coach. And so if you know anything about teaching, or if your parents are teachers, you know anything about teaching, you know that teachers don't generally get paid very well. But my family is, my parents are very, very well off. I'm not saying they're super wealthy people, but they're well off at this point in their life, and they're retired, but yet they've just managed their money really well. So because of that, and because I know my dad, and he's so good at doing finances, if I'm honest, a lot of the time in my life now, I've looked at that, and I've kind of had this voice of kind of, I should be doing this really, really well, but I'm not. And I always feel like I'm not measuring it. I'm just kind of letting you into my life. That's kind of how I feel, and maybe you feel along with me in that there's a sense of shame in the way you view or handle your money. Maybe you've screwed up a lot in the past. Maybe you're screwing up right now. Maybe first weekend you're like, oh crap, I don't have any money left. So I want you to know you're okay. Okay, you're all right. There's a chance. You still have a chance to learn. Still have a chance to grow. Still have a chance to use and value money the way you should value it, not for you, but for the God who owns you, right? And the God who owns your money. So I share all that to help you understand you're not alone if you don't feel like you understand money. Maybe you do. Maybe you're really good. My brother Caleb in the house is, going to he's a finance guy. That's what he graduated with. So if you have any questions about this talk, don't come to me. Come to Caleb afterwards. He's going to be your guy to ask your questions to. But with that, we all are aware of the power of money in our culture. The superior value of money in our culture is very apparent. You don't have to go far or think too hard about it. Much of our world, particularly the United States, revolves around money, right? How many songs and sayings and just things are built around this idea of money and having as much as you can, or having the ideal amount of it. If you're anything like me, you think about this idea of money, and you know that money doesn't buy you happiness, right? You know, money can't buy me love either. You know, the Beatles. Is that the Beatles who sang that song? I think it is. But if you're honest, if you really thought about it, you'd say, if I had an unlimited amount of money, I think my life would be a lot better off than it is right now. In fact, I don't think I'd really have any problems. Think about that. That'd be no money, like no issues with money. You have all the money you ever need. Think about your life. Think about it, pretty easy, right? You wouldn't ever have to worry about budgeting. This talk would be probably worthless. At least you would think it would be. But the reality is that that if you think like that, then you're not understanding money correctly. And the reality is, probably more often than not, was we don't view our money very correctly. We view it as something that we own, just like our time, but yet we don't own it. And this is shown in our culture so clearly. When we begin to view, what I say, or I said that when we begin to view things as we own them, but if we think of money as something as we own, we're bound to misuse it. And so this is shown clearly in our culture by how badly in debt our nation is and how badly in debt individuals within our nation are. This is crazy. The average household has $130,922 of debt. The average household in America. And $15,762 of that is on credit cards. Credit card debt. Whew. I'm thankful that my debt's not quite like that. But that just gives us a picture of the world that we're living in and the normality of it. I don't know if that's the right word, but just how it's the norm. Debt is normal. Now, obviously, I'm not going out there and saying that you can't ever get loans. School loans are not evil. Getting a mortgage or a house loan is not bad. I'm not saying those things. But I am saying that there's something in our culture that's gotten so used to this idea of using money as a means to get whatever we want and not viewing it as a means to honor God with the way we use it. So, how we spend our money shows what we value. Similarly to how we use our time, right? We use our money for money. You might think, okay, I'm not worshiping money, but how you spend your money kind of reveals what you are worshiping, and money is kind of the means to show what you are worshiping. So, for you, it might be, you really value the idea of being influential or having power, and so you want to gather and grow as much money as you can to be able to have influence and use money for that end. Or maybe you're somebody who really highly values what people think of you, and you serve this God of acceptance or approval, and so you're going to use your money as a way to get more people to like you by the way you dress or by the cool nifty gadgets you get, all these different things. You're going to use money towards that end. Or maybe it's just, you're just purely you want to live comfortably. And so you want to get as much money as you can. And in fact, you'll work like super, super hard so that you can live comfortably in the end, right? Maybe retirement's heavy on your mind. You're like, I can't wait. I'm going to only work 20 years and I'm going to be retired the rest of my life. Because I want to have money so I can be comfortable for the rest of my life. The reality is, money can be our God, but there's something behind it. There's something behind it often for us. And so I think it'd be a great question for us to kind of think about as we leave this time is, how does the way I view my money or use my money, what does that reveal about what I really worship? The reality is a lot of times we're not using it to worship God. There's something else we're using it to worship. And it's something we need to grow in repenting of, turning from, and turning back to God more and more. So in the Bible, what's God say about money? Jesus talks about money more than basically every other topic. He talks about money more than hell and heaven combined. That's crazy. He talks about the sin of greed, which is dealing with money. He talks about that nearly 10 times more than he talks about the sin of sexual immorality. Crazy, right? But it's interesting because that's not reflected in our Christian culture, is it? We barely ever talk about greed. Cam reminded me of this. Is from a sermon we both have heard, and basically what came out of it is simply that I think it was Tim Keller's church, and they were planning to do a series on like some of the main sins in the culture, and one of them was going to be greed. And Tim Keller's wife told him, "I bet the week that's going to be the week that most people won't come to, because nobody thinks that they have a greed problem." It's really interesting because that's true. Nobody thinks they're greedy, right? You might admit, okay, I have a problem with lust, or I have a problem with anger, or I have a problem with, fill in the blank. But you probably won't say you're greedy. And that's, there's no support groups for greed. There's no internet blockers to stop you from being greedy. There's not many books even written on the sin of greed, but yet it's there. And Jesus talks about it. The fact that Jesus is talking about it so much and we're not, might tell us a little bit about something about our own hearts and about our culture even. And so what we want to look at then is kind of see how money plays into our life if it's not really intentionally thought through. I listened to a sermon by a man named Stephen He's a Chinese pastor. I believe he pastors in New York. If not, somebody can correct me on that. But he basically said these three points. And I'm going to go through them here. First one is this. He says, if money becomes, or you can go and put the next one up, I think. Being controlled by money. So the first one is, if money is your security, then you will trust in money rather than God. So simply put, if money is where you find your sense of security, then that is where you're trusting in that rather than God, right? You're trusting in this means, this created thing, this created idea of currency, rather than trusting in the God who made everything. If money is your master, next one. If money is your master, then you will serve money rather than serving God. So when you're serving money and you're constantly thinking about it, you're constantly thinking about how your budget's going, or if you're constantly thinking, how can I get more money? I need to get more money. Then that's maybe a window into seeing that it's controlling you. It's your master, and you're serving that rather than God. And lastly, if it is your lover, then you're going to love money rather than God. I know these might sound pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. But this is pretty crazy too. He's saying if you love money, then you're going to love it more than you're going to love God. That's what Jesus talks about. He says that no one can serve two masters. He either love money or love God. So you can't serve two masters. And the reality is this: the way this plays out then in our life is this: is that you can go to the next one, Colton. Or is everybody good? Maybe go back real quick. Does everybody have it? One more. Anybody need more time? You good? Okay. Go ahead. Go to the first one. Is that if we're acting like owners of our money, then we are committing robbery. So that might sound crazy. But think about this. If we're thinking about our money as a steward, if we recognize that God is the creator and owner of all things, and we see that clearly, then we're going to view our money as a steward, and we're going to handle it rightly. But if we view our money as something we own, then what we're actually doing is we're committing robbery against the Most High God. You're stealing from Him. You're taking something that's not your own, and you're using it for your own gain. Whew, that's a shot to my heart. That's a conviction right there, right off the bat, as I think about how I use my money so often. If we're stingy and ungenerous with our money, then we're actually in slavery to it. So if you've never given to a charity in your lifetime, or you've never tithed at church or given something to that, or if you know that somebody's in need and you're like, man, I've got my things I need to do too. Again, I'm not saying that you always have to be giving the money. That's not what I'm saying. But if we're overall pretty stingy and ungenerous with our money, the reality is that we're actually a slave to it. That actually it's our master. This is a kind of an overflow of what it means to be mastered by money, is that we're unwilling to let it go. We're unwilling to give it to people and not see any benefit for ourselves. And lastly, if we love money, then we're committing adultery. Because what's the first and greatest commandment? You guys remember?
Love the Lord your God.
Yeah, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. So if we're loving money and as a result not loving God, then we're committing adultery against our God who saved us, and He's brought us into His family. He's brought us into His bride, the church. So that's a little bit sobering to think about. To think about how we view money and maybe misuse money so often. But here's some hope. That the way for us to begin to view money differently doesn't really even have to do with money. It has to do with God, right? That what we've been learning this whole summer is that if we're awakened to the reality of who God is, then it'll change everything. So, the only way, you can go to the next one, the only way for you to be free from trusting and loving and being mastered by money is to know that you have been secured by God, you're ruled by and served by God, and you're loved by God. It might seem simplified, but the reality is this, is that the only way you're going to be free from being a slave to money, the only way you're going to be free from being ungenerous and stingy, the only way you're going to be free from acting like you're this owner that you're not really an owner, the only way you're going to be free from that is if you understand that God's got you secure. He rules over you. He's the one who's over all things, and He's chosen to serve you, to allow you to use money, to give that money to you to use for your needs, and that He loves you beyond all compare, and that no amount of money, the way you use it or hoard it, is going to give you everything that God can give you. So the only way to use money rightly is to know and love God above it, to know Him fully, to understand all that He's done for you primarily. So if we understand these things, then we're going to be generous. We're going to be intentional with what we use it, and we're going to be wise. So if we understand these things, we're going to be generous, intentional, and wise stewards of God's money He has entrusted to us. That word entrusted is so powerful because He's saying He's trusting us to use His money in the way that He wants us to use it. So it's a weighty responsibility that I don't think we often think about. But I hope we'll begin to think about it. Again, the goal is not to do this perfect. Remember, we're all in the same boat. We all have mismanaged money. We all have used it for the wrong purpose. But the goal is to grow and begin growing now in how we view and use our money. Okay? So, I don't have any more notes, I don't think, for this. But first thing I want to think about is when we begin to view it as God's money, we begin to think of this concept of first fruits. How many of you guys remember the story of Cain and Abel? You guys remember what happened in the story of Cain and Abel? What happened? Cain killed Abel, right? Why did he kill him? He was jealous. Why was he jealous? Yeah. What kind of offering did Abel give? You guys remember?
Grain.
Yeah, it was the best of his stuff. He gave off the top of what he had. So imagine it's like he brings in his crops, and he doesn't go and pick out. He doesn't get all of his good stuff and kind of leave some of the rest. And all right, here you go, God. But He gave him the best. He gave him His first fruits, is the term. And so you guys have probably heard of tithing. I mentioned it earlier, this term tithing. And even thinking about it, you probably already think, okay, 10%. I got to give 10% of my money to the church. That's true. That is a biblical model, and I think it's a wise biblical model to follow. But the reality is this: that's kind of the bare minimum that God kind of calls us to think about submitting to Him. That's the bare minimum. Is that God really wants us to be considerate in how we, first and foremost, give Him a free will offering of thankfulness back to Him in all that He's given to us, all He's allowed us to be stewards of. And so that's something I want us to think about as we enter into even thinking about our budget is, do we think about how we can give and how much we can give? And the way this looks 1 Chronicles 29:14 says this. It's a really awesome verse. 1 Chronicles 29:14. David says this. He says, "But who am I and what is my people that we should be able thus to offer willingly? For all things come from you, and of your own have we given you." So he's saying, it's totally crazy. He's thinking like, who are we that we get to offer our tithes back to you? Who are we? The fact that we even have anything at all is a grace. And the fact that we get to have the opportunity to give you thanks by giving you something, that's even grace right there. So David gets it right there in that instant. He's getting that, okay, look, this is what it's about, is to give willingly of the things that God has graciously given to us. And so, giving of our money, to charities and things like that, I think the way you want to think through it is primarily think through giving to your church who is caring for your growth. So the reason why we give money to our church isn't just because the church needs it, but rather because it's God's primary means of oversight and care for your life. Meaning the care for your spiritual growth and your walk with Him is what the church is designed to be. And so that's, Cam talked about the importance of being a part of a local church. And that's also the importance of why we give to a local church, is that we want to give back to God in the way that He's already been providing for us through the church. Another things are just giving to God's global mission. We're going to get to hear more and more about God's work throughout the world, and we're also going to hear about the needs throughout the world. And one of those big needs is financial needs. And so there's an opportunity for us to think through, okay, how can I give of the excess amount of money that I clearly have compared to the rest of the world, even as a broke college student? How can I prioritize some of that? Just a little bit, just start with a little bit towards God's global mission. How can I begin to think about that? And again, we'll talk more about that. But and lastly, just giving to people in need, friends, family, the homeless, those who are impoverished, orphans, widows. Thinking, how can I strategically use my money to serve those around me? So again, this might feel like, oh man, I've got to give my money everywhere. But no, think through, what are the ways I want to be the most strategic in my giving to really honor the Lord and how I use it?